Hello, welcome to Seeking Heaven, the near-death experience and other phenomena. I'm your host, Tamara Caulder Richardson, a 6-time near-death experiencer, an evidential medium, as well as a Christ channeler. So welcome to my channel. This is something I'm very passionate about, speaking on things that are spiritual topics, and my guests that come on, which are my friends. I have met some incredible people, and today is no exception. So before we start with the first speaker, please subscribe because I do have bi-weekly shows starting in the fall. So, you want to get those alerts, and that will be Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard. And then we have live chats or live spiritual lessons on Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard. So make note of that. And if you subscribe, you'll just get the alerts. So that would be great. And also like and make comments, because I do respond to your comments. I try to respond to every single person. And consider the membership perks. That really helps support the channel and keep it going. I spend a lot of long hours. Sometimes it's not uncommon for me to spend 12, 15-hour days toward this channel, because I really care about my online global spiritual community and you. So thank you for being a true seeker and being a part of my channel. So let's go to our guest today. Super excited. Our guest is... I've had so much fun that we literally have to okay, we're going to actually do this interview because we're having way too much fun. They're so fascinating. So today's guest, let me tell you a little bit about him before I bring him on. And so that would be David Suich. Now, he is a near-death experiencer, researcher, and author of God Took My Clothes. What a cute name for a book. It's so awesome. I love that. Right there just says what charm that David has. He is a retired engineer, and he was involved for many years, from 2003 to 2018, in a charity project called Hope Outreach that actually helped with serving orphans in Nepal, Mexico, and Haiti. And so how he came, he's going to tell you more about it, but he had some questions like, what happens when you die? And he was going through, and he's going to tell us about it, his own chronic physical condition that he had, which triggered some depression. And then he started asking these, life questions, like probably many of you do, like, what's it all about? What are we here? What about the afterlife? And this led him to a 12-year journey, finding out these answers and interviewing over 700 near-death experiencers. And then one in particular we'll ask him about, there was an atheist that saw Jesus, which, you all know, I'm all about the Jesus. He's a love bug. How can you not love him? So he's here today. We're going to have a great time. Let me bring him on, and welcome, David.
Hi, Tamara. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here on Seeking Heaven.
Awesome. Well, we've really had, you're so fascinating, and you're so genuine and candid. And I just, I'm so excited, the things that you're going to be doing, because this is just the start. But let's talk about this, your journey a little bit, because people can learn from each other's journey. I think that's important in everybody's story. If people are willing to share it, and want to know, what was the physical condition you were going through, and just that time in your life, what was going on before this book came about?
Well, I was working for the nation's largest gas utility out in California. Mm-hmm. And I was a power plant engineer, so some of the power plants use natural gas. And I was doing well. I had a very good career. Everything was going well. I would joke that I have to find things to complain about because my life is so good. And right about in 1998, I started getting chronic pain in my hands. And back then I was a Christian. And it turned out that this was all throughout my body. I had tendonitis that started all throughout my body, my hands, my arms, my feet, my jaw. So at one point I had such difficult pain that it hurt to talk, it hurt to stand, it hurt to sit, it hurt to use my hands at all. I was out of work for a while. And of course, naturally, being a Christian, I was back then what you would call a born-again Christian. I went to church because, if I was going to get prayed for and healed, and this was, put all this behind me. And this went on for a while. Doctors couldn't fix the problem. I went to dozens of doctors, hundreds of different treatments over several years trying to fix the problem, and nothing worked. And I got prayed for by probably at least a dozen churches, hundreds of people. And one day I realized, well, something's not right here. And I was lying in bed in a lot of pain, and I came to a conclusion. And it's real hard for me to talk about because
you're supported here. You're supported here. I love you like a brother. You know that. So if you want to talk about it, you're supported. And the people that watch, I have the nicest people that watch my channel. They're really sweet. They really are. So it's up to you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I came to this conclusion, and the conclusion was, well, one of two things is happening here. Either there is no God, or more likely there is a God, but he's not going to heal me because I haven't been an obedient Christian. I haven't been a good person. I've sinned too much or whatever. And that was very painful to think that. And shortly after that, I was just on YouTube, just trying to distract myself from the pain, sitting at home. And I clicked on a YouTube video about a guy who was an atheist. And I think you mentioned him. Howard Storm. And
he's got several videos on here, and he is amazing to hear. It's the very bottom, one of the first interviews I've done, and he was also on Love Leaders, but it's very good. It goes into depth what happened to him. If I'm just telling people, if they haven't listened, it really is one of the better ones, I think.
Yeah, and his book, My Descent into Death, is one of my favorites in terms of near-death experience books. But anyway, I clicked on his video, and he gets led towards a hellish place, and he was an atheist, and he realizes, oh, there is a God, and he called out to Jesus for help, and Jesus came and got him, and he felt real.
Sounds kind of funny, but that's what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, and he felt real like ashamed. He could see they were going towards this good place that was good and holy and beautiful, and he thought of himself as garbage, filth, scum, and he thought, they made a mistake. I don't belong in heaven. And of course, Jesus had been taking him towards this heavenly realm, and they stopped. They weren't in heaven, they weren't in hell, they were in between. And Jesus looked at him and said, we don't make mistakes. You belong.
I remember that. Absolutely. I remember that distinctly. They were like in a galaxy, and he was holding him, and he goes, no, he said, I've been waiting for you to call me. He says, we don't make mistakes. Precious. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah. And that was the moment when I realized that my Heavenly Father had never left me, that there was something more to this pain that I was going through. And there was, and my body is finally now healing after, more than 20 years of this. It's finally healing. And there was some emotional stuff behind it that I had to work through, but there was a reason for it all. And it also brought me to a new place in life. It humbled me. It helped me learn how to work in a team with other people. It brought me a lot of good things. And I probably wouldn't have met my wonderful partner, my wife, if this pain hadn't hit me. So there was a lot of good that came out of it. But the other thing that happened is I remember when in that same video, when Jesus told Howard, well, you got to go back to earth and live the way God wanted you to, because he had lived an entirely selfish life. And they said, well, you're supposed to be loving each other and loving yourself and all that. And he says, well, I can't go back there. My heart's going to break, because you'll be up here and I'll be down there, and I'll be separated from this amazing love that I'm feeling from you. And they said, do you not understand? We've always been there with you. You've never been alone down there. And that was just a great video that kind of opened my eyes to realize that we're never alone, that God's always with us. It doesn't matter what judgments we have about God. If we say, oh, there is no God, it doesn't matter. They're still with us. They have no judgments about our judgments.
Right.
You're right. Was a big aha moment, and that started me into my investigations of near-death experiences. I've probably heard over 1,000. I stopped counting at 700. So,
really? Okay. And this is fascinating because you have more an objective point of view, and with the engineer background, I'm sure you're very, very detailed. I will say that they're not all the same. There are some, this is just my opinion. I want to get your opinion on it, but some are, the person, when they have it, they're wherever they are, right? So they may be enlightened, they may not, they may become enlightened, they may not afterwards, but there are some that are also, people don't like talking about it, but also negative ones too, which in a way, Howard's kind of was. It was like a hellish realm. It wasn't good. There's parts he doesn't like talking about. But when he called Jesus, he said he didn't even remember prayer. But when he called on him, he remembered finally, and and then he was taken out of that place, which shows how much love that we always have. But how do you, out of all the ones, you said you probably over 1,000, what are some commonalities that you found? And what about the darker ones, the white light ones, the ones that are just out of body versus the ones that I guess that would be transcendent, that change people in a bigger way? What did you find out?
Well, a lot of the experiences have common elements, but we have to remember that every person is different. So heaven will often create an environment to make the person feel comfortable. So one man, for instance, his favorite biblical character was Peter. And so when he got to heaven, he was greeted by Peter, who he said was a bit shaggy looking. So they probably feared how he did on earth, so he was a bit shaggy looking. And then if you like parks and gardens, you'll go to a park and garden. But the most common elements in a near-death experience is a person will find themselves outside of their body at the scene of an accident or in a hospital or after a heart attack or something like that. They see themselves from above, and then they're revived and they go back in. Some hear or are aware of a light off to one side or behind them, and they see a pinpoint of light. They get attracted to it like a magnet. It very rapidly gets brighter and 10,000 times brighter than the sun. And probably the most common element is the love that they feel at that point. They describe the love as, even the word love is completely inadequate to describe what they feel. They say things like, one man said, imagine the strongest love you've ever felt in your life and multiply it by about 500 or 1,000. And that's about what it feels like. Another guy said, imagine the 100 happiest moments of your life. Put them all into one moment, and you still don't come close as to how good it feels to be there. There are negative experiences as well. About 5% of the NDEs I've heard were negative. I believe that if a person is in the afterlife and they don't know what's going on, there's been cases where they're confused, what's happening, and the fear kind of builds up. And in the afterlife, thoughts are things. So whatever direction you take your thoughts into, you're creating a reality. So I think that can create a negative experience. I also think the state of a person's soul, if they're in a state of, creating selfishness and misery, in the lives of others, and then they die, they're going to be attracted to a place where people are most like them. So the hellish or the negative experiences, I don't think are punishments. I think they're more soul choices, and I believe they're temporary. I think when a soul is ready, they all come home to the light. Some souls will disconnect to various levels from God, some completely, which you would call hellish experience. But I think when they're ready, they all come home to the light.
Absolutely. Well, I asked one time Jesus that. I said, is there a hell? Of course, we say in the South, hell. And I really didn't expect an answer. Like, what is that all about? And about 3 months later, he told me, he said, people go, and it's kind of what you said, people go to where their mental state is. And if they're sick in life and they refuse my love, it's free will still. And they don't want to cross over or transition. And he said that if they're sick in their mind, and he named it, like, pedophiles, blah, blah, blah. He named a whole bunch of stuff. He said they go to the area that were people like them. So he kind of showed me, have you ever been to like a business party, and then you go to this, a party, and then you gravitate to the people that are like you. He said that's kind of what happens. So if they're in that, whatever state they are, that's where they gravitate. He said, but I offer my love to everybody, but it's a free will thing. So it's they're in that. That's why it's so important to try to raise yourself out of, a bad mental state and be around positive people and people that support and love you, because that can define your mental state, can define your reality.
There were even cases where a person was in the afterlife. They were very confused. The fear started ramping up. It became a very hellish experience. And then they would give up. They would say, oh, well, I'm obviously dead. There's nothing I can do about it. And they would calm down. and then immediately the experience becomes extremely positive.
Okay.
And then some of those even went on to, to move into the light and so forth.
Now, this was a 12-year venture that you did. How did you,
Yeah.
I mean, you probably didn't say, oh, I'm doing this for 12 years. You probably just, you're probably still looking at all of this.
I hear a near-death experience. I hear 2 or 3 new ones every week, and sometimes somebody will call me. I got a call from a guy a couple weeks back, and he said, well, nobody's going to listen to this in my circle of friends and family. So, and he told me all about his near-death experience. So yeah, I'm still hearing new ones.
Oh, wow. That's sweet that you're offering them a safe platform, because it wasn't that many years ago that this was not, now it seems to be popular, but it wasn't. And you really didn't have anyone to talk to. That's very kind that you offer that to people and have in the past. So out of all, for you personally, as you started hearing this story, did you start changing? What happened with you as a person?
Oh yeah, it totally changed me. So at first it was very traumatic because I had been a Catholic Christian my whole life. And when they teach you when you're young, that stuff gets ingrained into your mind. And I was trying to match the religion of Christianity to what I was hearing from near-death experiencers. And it just got more and more difficult. And I remember hearing near-death experiencers talk about the life review, and they had other lives they were seeing during the life review, reincarnation or multiple lifetimes. That's a no-no in Christianity. So I eventually had to throw away what I believed. And when you throw away your core beliefs, it's terrifying. But the new system of beliefs was just a much bigger, more loving, more compassionate God. I mean, the God that I understood before was a God who was like a good father, but a strict disciplinarian. You better stay in line. And if you don't, there's eternal torture. It's just not, it's not a whooping with the leather belt. It's torture for all eternity. Well, that's kind of a hard thing to live under.
Yeah.
And my version of God, the God that I see, or the part of God that I perceive now, completely changed. I see a very compassionate, kind-hearted, gentle, loving God who loves everyone regardless of their beliefs and doesn't punish people. Punishment's a human concept. Yeah. And then the other thing it did is, because this big thing in my life that I held on to, this big truth under the umbrella of Christianity, turned out to be wrong, I questioned everything else in my life. And what the near-death experiencers told me, for instance, just little things. I remember one lady, she was having a life review, and they showed her that it was important how you treated animals. Now, at that point in my life, I didn't care about animals. I didn't like cats or dogs. And now if a dog got close to me, I'd kick it. Okay.
Oh, well,
or
okay.
I'd yell at it. Same with a kid. Okay. I didn't like kids either. I wouldn't kick the kid, but I'd push him away.
Okay.
And that totally changed. And now I love animals. Animals love me. And of course, I spent 15 years working with the kids. I fell in love with children. And so it changed the way I deal with everything. It even changed my politics. I used to be a person that I was very rigid. So I would say things like, well, if we have a problem with terrorism, we should just
kill them.
Carpet bomb the whole place and let God sort them out. Oh my
That's
God,
a good solution.
I couldn't believe I would say something like that. I mean, the idea to me is horrific now. They're human beings.
I know. Well, you got to start somewhere. This gives everybody hope. But no, seriously, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, so it changed everything. And probably the biggest thing was the fear that it took away. I mean, even as a Christian, I had been afraid of death. And now, having heard about this place, I realize the importance of life down here. It's really important what we're doing here. I mean, what I've learned from near-death experiencers, that we're kind of on the outside of the fractal of God. We're the engine of growth of God with these physical incarnations. This is how these experiences help God evolve, help the whole of God evolve. And it's important. But when I think about death, I'm looking forward to it as something exciting. I mean, I have no fear of death, and I have a sense of always being protected and taken care of and guided and loved, which I didn't have before. So I have a lot more peace in my life. I have a lot more peace, a lot more joy. I went from being a very rigid, sort of ruthless person to being very calm and accepting of others. And if somebody's acting out, just, keeping my cool and, okay, this person's having a bad day. Is there something I can do to, help them or calm them down? It just changed the way I deal with people, with myself, with nature, with animals, everything. Yeah, I realized I had been living a life of ignorance before.
Wow, that takes, wow, I felt that in my heart. Wow, that took a lot of courage to say. But, I look back at other versions of myself. I feel like I've had so many lives and just this one. And I look back and I've always loved God, but there was a time that I didn't really, allowed that in. But I remember one day for me that was awakening. This is just awful. I hate to admit it, but it'll maybe help someone, who knows. As I was standing in an elevator, and I don't know why this. I don't know. I was in an elevator, and there was a very poor Hispanic family, and there was the daddy, the mom, and they were little people. And I'm little. I'm 5'2", but there was the mama, the daddy, the kids, and they were precious. But they were sitting there, and they looked afraid. And I got on the elevator, and I had my Louis Vuitton briefcase, and I was going to a business meeting, and I was all, I always had the glasses matching the suit, and I was there, and I had my little, and I got on the elevator, and I realized I ignored them. I realized that they were like a non-person. And then so something said to me, look at their face, look at their eyes. And then I looked at them, and they were so kind and so afraid. And you could tell that they were maybe in a new world. I don't know. Or they seemed frightened, like which, I would probably be that way if I ended up in another country. I didn't know the language or what have you. And I realized how I felt like a piece of crap. I realized, that was not a happy moment for me. I realized that I was shallow and that I was a piece of crap. And after that, I started talking to everybody, and then I started changing and evolving. But I know that seems silly, and I don't know why it was that thing. But I didn't like that person, and I wasn't always that harsh. But in reality, underneath it, I had this false world that I had created, and it wasn't kind, and it wasn't in present time. It was just this false reality, and I like so much more of the person that I am now.
I like that false reality. Yeah, that's exactly what I felt like. This image of the world I created,
and I had so much shame. Because they were probably better people than I was. Well, whatever that means, but you know what I mean? They were good people. And I felt shame. I felt a lot of shame. And then I began to start changing. That was one of the things. And it's a small thing, but it was a big thing to me. So, you never know what it is, the thing that gets you on your spiritual path or what encourages you. But it's funny because God knows. It's amazing. It has a plan to kind of wake you up to see where you are. Okay, so there's so much in the NDEs things. Wow, so much there. What about now? Let's go back to, there's some people that have this near-death experience that I find that just are outside their bodies. They're hanging out in the surgery room, which is still interesting because at least now they know they're a spiritual being, but they don't always go, what is it? The white light, all unity, and some just, it's still an awakening. The higher level NDEs, which one did you feel that people came back more engaged in their purpose? Was it all of them, or was it just certain ones?
Well, certainly just about every NDE I've ever heard, it always affects the person's lives. The first thing, they come back more altruistic, less materialistic. They are less religious, more spiritual. They are less interested in money and material possessions and far more interested in meaningful relationships. They will often have a career change. A man who was a billionaire, who had an NDE, gave up his ties to the finance industry and became a family counselor. A man who was a policeman who had a near-death experience came back and decided to become a high school teacher. And another man who was involved in organized crime decided to give all that up, and he became
Wow.
a counselor for delinquent youths.
Wow.
People have marital changes often because they come back a completely different person. So if the relationship does survive, it is always different than it was before. So they come back completely different people, almost all of them, even the ones with brief NDEs. But you are correct from what you said. The ones who have more extensive NDEs, they are far more changed in a profound way. They will come back sometimes with enhanced psychic abilities or empathic abilities. Their whole priority system changes. Whatever they were chasing before, whether it's, money or, cars or, sports or vacation, that all changes. So they have one priority. Most of them come back with one priority, which is to love others with the best of their ability. And that includes themselves, of course, and love yourself and love others. So yeah, they come back with a different system of priorities and what's the word I'm looking for? Morals. Yeah, it's a different moral standard.
Okay. Yeah. Well, a lot of NDEers, I think it's 75%, they don't stay married to the same person. But can you imagine?
Is it that high?
You have to feel sorry for the other person because they expected, I think, who they married. Now they've got somebody else. I had Yvonne Sneeden. She's was one of my earlier ones that I did an interview, and she had 2 NDEs where she saw Jesus, but she did a film on NDEs and the after effects and all that. And she discussed that marriage part. And there was one example she used, and it was a guy who was making like a ton of money. And, I guess he was married to what we would consider a trophy wife. And he was making all this money. He had an NDE, and now he wants to be a minister making like $32,000 a year. So she left him. She said, if you go do that, and the same thing happened with Howard Storm. Remember that story?
He was an artist and a professor, and he became a pastor in a Methodist church.
Yeah. And the wife told him, he's also in the love letter where he talks about marriage. It's very candid and raw because he's a character. I mean, I was like, okay, I just let him go on. But she did the same thing to him. She said, if you stop this paycheck as a professor and go do this minister stuff, I'm leaving you. And he goes, well, she was good on her word. And so it's not, I don't think it's just people that have near-death experiences. It's also people that have spiritually transformative experiences where they have kind of like it could be a slow awakening, could be a big, the NDE is like, boom, big awakening at one time, but you can have a gradual awakening as well. And when that person changes, the person they were with are like, who the heck are you? Yeah, it's like a different person. So this is something that tends to happen a lot. During this study, did you feel like that you changed spiritually?
Oh yeah, I changed completely spiritually. I mean, it got to the point where back in 2013, I mean, I was in a corporate job making a good 6-figure salary, and everything was all fine other than the fact that I couldn't take the corporate world anymore. It was just so cold, and there were so many power struggles and just such a lack of integrity that I couldn't take it anymore. And I thought, well, I've put some money in the bank. It's easier having a budget than a boss. So I retired a little earlier than I was ready to do. But, so I keep my expenses down for now. So you never know what God has for you, though. So,
this is a really good point right here, because these are about choices, still free will, and free will here, you have free will on the other side, you have free will all along. But when you start kind of decoding the reality, the matrix of what we live in, this hologram effect, whatever it is, and start looking, for me, I owned an ad agency 27 years, totally giving away my age. And I did really well and won awards and this and that, again, matching suits. And it was, it was fine. But then when we had my husband's sister, she was so funny, and she was gorgeous. She was a model, beautiful. And she had 4 different cancers, and she was so dignified going through that. And I was a good friend of hers beforehand. And so we went through that with her. And at the time, then the recession hit, and then we have her that we're saying she's dying, and she's young. She's like 46, and but a young 46. I mean, because she worked part-time at Hooters, so she looked good. So it was very difficult, and I remember hiding that because I didn't feel I could tell the people in my advertising world or my clients. And then I was head of the Business Marketing Association of Charlotte, and I would go to nationals in Chicago, and I'd win awards and stuff. That was that world that I was in. And when this happened, I realized I got this feeling that it just was what it was. I was like, these people don't care about me. They don't. And I would help get people jobs. And when it was all said and done, and I ended up losing my agency.
Oh, wow.
Because here's the thing: when God talks to you, and you don't follow, I'm not going to say something here. This is true. When you don't follow, when God asks you to do something, whether you end up in the hospital, you lose a marriage, you lose whatever. I'm hard-headed, and so that's what it took, because it was time for me to come in to be of service. And I realized none of those people helped me, and I realized that I didn't really like those people. I didn't like that. What I wanted someone to like me for myself, without what I could do for them. And so, there's a price. I don't make that money that I did anymore, or anything like that. I mean, I was telling someone the other day, I probably could make more money selling Girl Scout cookies, but I feel like I have integrity, and I'm being of service, and I'm following what God wants me to do, and somehow it'll all work out. Because I love that passage in Psalms, and I can't remember which one it is, about, do I not take care of the birds, and then this and that? Do I not know that you need all, extra, or all the needs that you need? So I think that because we are an eternal spiritual being, we are creating with God, I realized, look, do I want to sell wrenches and for clients? I had a lot of manufacturing clients, or like bolts for toilet seats, or do I want to do something to help humanity and serve God? So you wonder why some people wake up and some people don't, but it's a journey. So going back to your study, what made you finally write the book? And because, at some point you had to decide, okay, I've got enough information. At what point did you get to that point to write the book?
Well, the things I learned from near-death experiencers were just so beautiful. Things like, well, we don't care what kind of religion you use, or even if you use a religion, we still love you. And, we don't care what you've done in your life. We still love you. You still get to come home, and we're not judgmental up here on the other side of the veil. And, you're going to live forever. You've always existed. That was one that was a surprise to me. I thought, you're created, and then if you do well, you go to heaven and you get to live forever. No, we've always existed. So all these truths I heard, I thought, the world needs to hear about this. These people are obviously telling the truth. They're all talking about basically the same things, similar experiences, and the world needs to know about this. And there are plenty of near-death experience books out there, but I didn't see one that really did a good summary of what they all say and how that applies to our current lives here on Earth and what's happening here. So I wanted one that was sort of a summary of what they say and how we should be living our lives here on planet Earth.
So now, obviously, we want people to get the book. God took my clothes, get the book. And so you don't want to give everything away on that. But I think that it's an eye-opener for a lot of people, whether you had a religion, no religion, whatever that may be, that we live forever is kind of a, big thing to bite off, because then at some point there's responsibility.
Oh, yes.
Right.
And sure. Just as a human being enjoys watching a good movie or reading a really good book to experience a different reality. If you're reading a really good book, you're into it, and you feel like you're in the story. Same with a good movie. Souls enjoy doing that. They enjoy incarnating into physical lifetimes for the learning experience, to experience a different reality, to grow, to interact with others, to make connections. Yeah.
Now, I wanted to talk about one of the things you were talking, and I want to point this question out. It must have come up in your research about senses in heaven. You want to talk
about senses in heaven are very different. For instance, hearing, and you know this well. You've had 6 NDEs. there's a type of communication mind to mind, and it's direct, it's nonlinear. You sort of get a download in, an instant, and that can take you an hour to explain it to somebody in words, right? So the communication, you don't need your hearing so much for communication. Your hearing is for the music. So the music in heaven is beautiful. And if anybody's interested in hearing the best description of the music in heaven, Don Piper's book, 90 Minutes in Heaven, gives a great description of the music in heaven. I put his quote of the music in heaven in my book. So if you buy my book, you'll hear that part of his testimony. Vision, for instance, there's no blind spots. So, right around here, we can't see anymore. In heaven, you can see 360 degrees, including behind you. You still focus on just one thing, but you can see in all directions at once. The colors are very interesting. When I first started hearing near-death experience testimonies, they would say, well, I saw these colors in heaven. I saw this garden and it's beautiful colors we don't have here. And I said, well, what colors? And they said, well, I can't tell you. We don't have them here. So it took me a while, but it was actually, I think, Howard Storm in his book, he talked about this. And I've heard this from others. We have 3 primary colors, right? Yellow, blue, and red. And a mixture of those 3 colors form all the colors we see, every color of the rainbow. In the heaven, there are over 80 primary colors. So imagine going from black and white to, this colorful world, and then take that up a few notches, and that's how heaven is. There's a sense of peace, joy, belonging. There's a sense of safety. People, when they're in the presence of the light, say I realize this being of light that we would call God was going to protect me forever, that nothing was ever going to harm me. I was never going to be hurt in any way. Your hearing, you don't just hear music, you hear tones and levels of tones that you can't hear on earth. So yeah, all the senses are different. And in heaven, it's a place of senses. It's a place where it's like a buffet for the senses. There are beautiful parks and gardens that rival the very best that we have here. I mean, they put them to shame. I remember one guy saying, I was in a park in heaven. And I said, okay, what was it like? He says, well, it was really beautiful. And I said, well, how beautiful? Like Yosemite? And he said, maybe 100 times more beautiful than Yosemite National Park, which is, one of the most beautiful parks in the world that we have. People travel from all over the world to see Yosemite. So it is a buffet for the senses up there, and your senses are all heightened. So people report having feelings that are more intense than any of their emotions they ever had on earth. Their thought processes are heightened. They can think more clearly and quickly. So it is a place of heightened senses and emotions and thoughts.
Now, what about bodies? I'm trying to think, what would people want to know? What about bodies? Because we have a body here, but it's, muscle, tissue, all of that. I saw having a body, but it wasn't made up of this.
Yeah, so people describe, at first I found it a little confusing because some people said, I was an orb of light, I was a ball of light. And others said, well, I had a body and it was a light body, or they saw their, grandparents or whatever in heaven, they have a body. So there's not really levels, any more than there's levels of love. You love your newborn child. Well, how many loves is that? Well, okay, you can't divide it up, but we're going to say there's levels. So on the lowest level of heaven, where you have a body, you can sort of manifest and look any way you want. People choose to look the best version of themselves.
To look
in
good.
their mid-20s and
right.
So you have any kind of, you can even take the form of an animal if you want. You can choose to appear any way you want, but most people choose to appear in their mid-20s, maybe early 30s, the best they've ever looked. I remember one woman, she said, I saw my grandmother in heaven, but it didn't look like my grandmother. What do you mean? She says, well, my grandmother was an old woman with gray hair and no teeth and wrinkled skin and hunched over and could barely walk. And when I saw her in heaven, she was a beautiful woman, about 30 years old, long dark hair, and she smiled and had a full set of pearly white teeth, and she just looked amazing. And a lot of people say that. Even one young girl, there was one testimony of a 5-year-old girl who died, and her great-grandfather had showed around heaven. And of course, her parents, when she came back and said, she was shown around heaven by a great-grandfather. They showed her pictures of her great-grandfather. She says, no, that's not him. So she didn't recognize it, her great-grandfather, when he was old. When she saw a young picture of him, she goes, oh, yeah, that's him, when he was young. So.
And, it's funny, they come through all the time in readings, and it makes me laugh. It's so cute. They'll show me in my mind's eye of like a handsome young picture in a military outfit, and I'll describe it. And I'm like, they didn't know you like that. So sometimes they'll describe images or pictures that's there, but they always come through young. And I think it's so cute because a grandmother that, like you described, and she'll come through looking young and beautiful or what have you. But in reality, we could choose being a child if we wanted to have that experience over there.
Sure.
Whatever we wanted. But most people don't pick old.
Yeah, you have a good 20, 30 years of that here. It's like, yeah, I've had enough of that for now.
Yeah, I think I'm going to look really good. And then what does the Bible say? A glorified body. So, you're mocking that up, whatever that is. I love that movie with Cuba Gooding Jr. and Robin Williams, where, do you know what I'm talking about? Where Things May Come.
Yeah, oh yeah, I've seen that movie.
It's really good. And then where the daughter later on is actually this beautiful Asian lady that he saw on a plane, and it was the daughter. So we can mock that up. That's interesting. Yeah, and the colors. So yeah, all this is good stuff. And people could also be an orb or a light. So it's you could instantly morph by thought into whatever you wanted. Tell me some of the after effects that you found with your research with people.
Well, I think we talked about some of those. They come back, they have some career changes.
Mm-hmm.
They're mainly interested in connecting with other people and fulfilling their purpose and being as loving and compassionate as they can be. So that's the biggest after effect. They're aware of something that many humans aren't. So they come back very aware of the connectedness of all human beings. So there is a network, and I'm doing some speculation here. This isn't always from near-death experiencers, but there is a network of quantum-based multi-dimensional energy here on Earth. The New Age spirituality community refers to this as the crystalline grid, but it connects all human beings. So when one human being is suffering, that suffering is part of that grid, and it brings down everybody. And when you bring hope or joy to just one soul, that goes into the grid as well, and millions receive the vibrations. So we have a lot of low-hanging fruit in our society. So we have a lot of people that it wouldn't take much effort to bring hope and joy to that soul. And homeless people, maybe elderly that are being ignored, who don't have someone to care for them, people who are too sick, weak, or old to take care of themselves, that aren't being taken care of. Just a little bit of compassion for these people.
Oh, wow. I agree.
Or would be taking care of that low-hanging fruit, and everyone would benefit from it. So these people come back and they really want to serve humanity. That's the biggest difference. Many of them, their hearts are on fire with love. One man, Gordon Allen, he came back and he said, my heart was on fire, and it was on fire with love, and that's with me. It stayed with me. It's still there. So they come back with this burning, strong desire to be compassionate and loving to other human beings, and they're here now to make the world a better place, not just for themselves, but for everybody. So that's probably the biggest change. They just have a different mindset. They no longer have the mindset that we find so prevalent in modern cultures, which is us versus them. That's how wars start. It's us versus them. Well, war is the silliest thing in the world, right? From a spiritual perspective, we're all connected.
It makes sense.
I'm working outside and I actually poke myself in the eye with my right hand, and my left hand says, you son of I'm going to get you for that, and grabs a hammer and just smashes the heck out of my right hand. Well, that's not right. That's what war is. It doesn't help anybody. So
it doesn't help.
Come back with a different perspective. They know we're all connected. They know the importance of helping every human being on Earth, especially the ones who are in desperate situations.
Well, it matters, and I think if everybody did their part, it does. There's something that feeds into the energy of say this, well, it's more than that, but we could say it's different layers, but into the planet. And by us doing a random act of kindness or doing ever what our heart, which I feel where God connects to us, and we're able to do that service, then it does create a love energy. I always say if we're going to have a revolution, let's have a love revolution. God, that sounds like a hippie, doesn't it? But but that if we had more love on the planet, we'd have more understanding.
Yes. And I like that you mentioned the hippie revolution, because I've heard from the other side of the veil that that was consciousness blasting forward, but the world wasn't ready for them yet. You know, they believed in all these concepts that are now finally being adopted into modern culture, you know, recycling, natural living, you know, being colorblind in terms of, you know, no racial prejudices. Living in cooperation with nature and each other in small communities, cooperation as opposed to competition. A lot of their ideas are now integrated into modern culture. I mean, off-grid living is growing at 30% a year. So, you know, the world wasn't ready for it back then,
right?
But it is now. The world didn't have the knowledge access back then, but they do now. So some of the near-death experiencers were told about a future Earth. And they said, well, there's going to be small community people, around 100 to 150 people, and they're all going to cooperate and live in harmony with nature and each other. And that this was going to happen within, well, about 150 to 200 years. Now, that seems difficult to believe, but look back 150 years ago, how different the world was then than it is today. I mean, you know, you had horses and carriages taking people around. If you wanted to send a letter to your buddy on the other side of the country, it took 6 months and you hoped it got there. You know, so can it happen? Sure, it can happen, and it's going to be a different world in the future.
Well, that would be if we really thought of each other as family, which we are. Or actually, I think it's more than that. We're more than that. I think we probably originated from the source, and then we sectioned off and sectioned off and sectioned off, and then we forgot what game that we were playing, but we're all part of the one. But we can simply say right now, family, that's easy. But if we cared for one another like that, then we wouldn't have a tit for tat mentality. Or what about me? So I think it's the what about me to, you know, I am, we are, God is, you know, more of that mentality. But I think it's getting there. You know, it's funny. I think that, I don't know what you want to call it, the media, the whatever. I mean, that's how news makes money from news, right? But I think in reality, I think that people are really loving. And I also think that there isn't a lot of prejudice. I mean, I live in the South, and we have every kind of mixture of people being married. I mean, I don't see anything. I mean, I'm sure it's out there, but I've never seen anything. So I think that people are a lot more loving and accepting than we're given credit for. I think it's kind of a bad rap.
Yeah, you're right. You know, and I got to admit, the near-death experience stuff helped me. I mean, I was very, well, actually that change started before my near-death experience stuff, but it was a spiritual connection that helped me. I was living in Southern California, and in the early 80s, there was a big influx of illegal immigrants, and it changed the culture there. And I was very upset. I did not like this. And I had a hatred in my heart for Mexicans. So I used to say, you know, we need to handcuff 2 Mexicans to every lawyer and send them out of the country. That was my attitude. And I said once, anybody who's speaking Spanish in public, we should cut their tongue out. That was,
wow, a little bit harsh.
And of course now, you know, yo hablo español perfectamente. Hasta los chistes en español puedo entender.
Oh, that's good. I'm so impressed.
So I remember when I was praying one night, and I said, you know, God, it's not good for a Christian man to have a hard heart like this. Please change me. And I heard very clearly, you need to learn Spanish. And I remember thinking,
are you serious?
No, I hate that language. Any other language is Spanish. He says, no, you got to learn Spanish. Now I'm 28 years old at this time. So I'm 56 now. So half my life ago. And I bought some tapes, and I started half-heartedly listening to Spanish music, and then Spanish, you know, programming and, tapes of instructors teaching Spanish. And I was kind of picking it up a little bit. And then my church made an announcement. We're going to go to this orphanage in Mexico. It was an announcement made in the singles group. Okay. Because I was single back then. And I thought, well, I don't like kids too much. I certainly don't like the Spanish language too much. I'm not thrilled with Mexicans. But there's single women from the group going down. I'm going to meet
Really? So that's why you went. Isn't that funny?
I show up 7 a.m. Saturday morning at the church, and I had to get up early. My only day to sleep in. I'm like, oh, okay, the women, I'm going to meet someone. So I get there, and it's 3 married couples and me. And I'm going,
that's funny.
Again. What a waste. I got to be about a bunch of Spanish-speaking kids all day? Hell no. I'm never doing this again. And we pulled into the orphanage. I'll never forget this. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I went, oh, that's why I was supposed to learn Spanish. I'm going to be working here. So, I started Steps of Hope Outreach with a friend of mine. We spent 15 years. Over that 15 years, we took in over $500,000 of donations for the 3 orphanages we worked with. And I fell in love with the Mexican people and their culture and the kids. And I learned Spanish. I'm bilingual now. And my wife, of course, is Mexican. She doesn't speak a word of English.
Really?
So God can change the heart of anybody.
Yes, that's a beautiful story.
He knew I was going to like more than I knew what I was going to like, right?
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Well, you're right. I mean, God, I always say that, Jesus is a clay maker. We're like a piece of art. And it's amazing because I mean, I look at myself and go, wow, I'm here. I couldn't have seen that. But like your story, that is just beautiful. And then also the children, and then you're helping the children. It's funny. I always make a joke if someone goes, I hate whatever, fill in the blanks, especially if it's a type of person, it's just some kind of silly thing. Say Mexican. Well, if you don't learn this life, guess what? Next life you're going to be. You're going to be exactly the person that you didn't like, because we're all one. We're all similar. We live forever. So,
right.
Which is God's little joke on all of us.
Eckhart Tolle said, he said, life will give you whatever experience is best for the advancement of your consciousness, something to that effect, right? And it will, if you're having a problem with something, life's going to make you face it.
But what's beautiful is not only did you, that was something organically, that was a God thing, organically happen, and that you began to not only dislike children, you began to love and help them in a very big way, and began to not only dislike the Hispanic culture, but embrace and love to the point that, being married to someone that's Hispanic. I mean, that's absolutely beautiful. And, we've been everything. I mean, we've been all different languages, all different things, male, female, but that is beautiful how God works in people if we just surrender. But it's funny when you did that little prayer, oh, help me, you're like, you probably didn't see all that coming.
No, I didn't.
You're like, whoa, or this is, go ahead.
I envisioned myself speaking the language where I said my tongue should be cut out if I speak that in public. Now I speak in public. So.
Oh, and God's got to have a sense of humor, but I think that He tailors whatever we need to learn for us. And then, but what's great is He turned this in something that is a love interest and passion of yours now.
Yes, I love Mexico. I spent 2 years of my life in Mexico. I love going to Mexico. Yeah.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I've personally found the Hispanic people very soulful and loving and kind and very giving and genuine. And so
wonderful culture, wonderful people.
Yeah, incredible culture. And many of them have good, they're very, what is the word? They have a reverence toward God. A lot of, you don't see it too much in America these days, but a reverence, like a respect, like a surrender, like, look, it's not a fear thing. It's just a respect thing. Like an order, like an order. Mm-hmm. I can't really, maybe I'm not saying that properly, but there's a respect to God, respect for life. There's a sacredness that I like, that I've seen in them, that's classy. I really like it a lot. And we can learn from, each other. But that's interesting. Turn the thing that you hate into the thing that you love most. That's totally a God thing. And that's why it's an adventure. You just never know. So what about we're talking about the after effects and purpose. I have to tell you, with me, it just is what it is. I'm obsessed with my purpose, and that's to bring heaven to earth. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? I don't know. I'm working on it. I was told to do this show in August by Jesus. And he even told me the name. I was like, okay. And he said, he told me to be more open and not, and he said, we're going to talk about judgment labels and me judging people. He goes, you'll see. But it was really about me putting stops to myself and labeling myself, which I didn't even realize I had. Because, you know, like you're saying, you were talking about your barriers, right? We all have those inner barriers. And we have to remove that so we can love ourselves and love our fellow man. So they were subtle, but they were there. And I just embrace things so much more now. Because think about it. Isn't that kind of the problem we're having right now all over the world? You think this way, I think this way. And I'm like, okay, why can't we just like both, what's the problem? Why can't we just have an opinion, go on with it? And I don't see what the deal is, but that has been a problem, right?
It's been a huge issue right now.
Oh gosh, and the duality. And somebody asked me the other day, well, what about the Christians versus the New Agers? Why does there have to be this against that? And why do we're labeling stuff all the time? Someone said something harsh to me the other day on a comment, and it was just like, and I realized it was their labeling. People get hung up on those things, but then you think, look what they did to Christ. Look at the horrible names they said. They even accused him of working with Beelzebub.
Oh yeah, he's son of God. I mean, so are we. We're children of God. But he was like the example, the master human of what we can become, and they killed him.
And they killed him. Yeah, exactly. I'm like,
they criticize you and call you evil for being spiritual. Well, you're not alone. They did that to Jesus.
Right, and exactly. So when you say, I want to be like you, I want to get to know you, I want to be, you don't know, I mean, that could go, you don't know how far that could go. I mean, you could end up with a stigmata or something, which people do, when they want to really experience the pain and the suffering. And I said, look, I'm a wimp. I don't want to go that far. I'm just trying to make it through today, do the best that I can. But I do think that, God also knows our boundaries and knows, and the other thing is, with people I've noticed, he will put them in areas that they have a natural proclivity to be in. Like if they're engineer or if he'll put them in ways, they're good at gathering detailed information. He won't put someone in an area of public speaking if they don't like that kind of thing or they're not good at it. You ever notice that?
I get that completely. I mean, that particular example speaks to me because when you're in a room and there's a speaker coming out and he's going to give a speech, just about every person in that room would rather die than have to be the person up there talking. I'm sitting there going, I wish I was up there talking. I like being in front of a group. So yeah, it's like,
Right. And a lot of people, they don't like that or what have you, but it depends. Everybody's good at certain things. They have patience for some people have patience for things that I don't, whereas I have patience more in other areas that other people don't. My mom was pointing this out. I thought that was very odd. She said, oh, but you're very patient with people, blah, 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 blah. Because I am kind of impatient. Like, how long is this going to take? Are we almost there yet? But when it comes to someone needing a healing or being there for someone, I will take that all the way out. I'll camp out if I need to. So
you were very patient with me on our first call and took a lot of time with me. So.
Well, I don't look at it like that. And that's how, we should help each other. And so that's what we do. And, but it's, I really do love people. And I think that's the secret. It makes me sad when I see people with so much anger in the heart, and sometimes our words can't change them. So I think that's when I do pray for people, say, I don't know what this person's needs, but if you can soften their heart and you can be in their life and show them more love. I mean, sometimes I'll just say that because I don't know how to help somebody. Sometimes I'm not that person to help someone. And so, we all do what we can, in this life. But the purpose with the NDEs, I'd say that's pretty strong with a lot of people. And it is, I guess if I had to say, you're going to, everybody knows they're going to die. What would worry you the most? I want to make sure I did my purpose right. I want to make sure I want to make sure that I got what I needed to in this life. I want to make sure. I think it's because in so many past lives, I probably did not do that. So I'm trying to make up for a lot of things to make sure it goes right. Since I'm awake, right? While we're awake
Right.
and while we remember in between the amnesia, in between lives. So collecting all this information and then you're writing a book. Did you have any spiritual truths or epiphanies?
While I was writing the book, I've had lots of minor spiritual truths and epiphanies that came through. And probably the most important one for the book was when I was writing the book, I have a chapter on hell there, which I don't go into too much because
You mean hell?
it's scary. But one of the epiphanies
Okay.
I had was that this is not a punishment. Okay, so
Right,
punishment, the idea of you've done something wrong, so judgment, and then now you must pay, punishment. Those are human concepts. The mind of God, I mean, this was sort of an epiphany that I had, cannot be fathomed. It is not the mind of human being. It is pure light and love and compassion. It does not have anger. It does not have judgment. It doesn't even have expectation. This light, people describe, only loves unconditionally and beyond words. And that was probably the biggest thing, because I had this fear as a Christian. You know, they put the fear of hell into you. And
oh yeah,
I remember sitting in Catholic school when I was a young boy. I went through grade school and then my first year of high school in Catholic school. And I remember the nun, you know, saying, she was talking to the boys, right? They separated the boys and the girls for the Bible study. And she says, "Don't you boys even think about sex. If you even think about sex, you're going to hell." You know, the poor boys are going, "That's all I ever think about. I'm screwed." You know,
that is so
cute. Going on, you know. So that was a big epiphany. That, you know, what you mean? I'm loved no matter what I do. Yes. You mean if I've, you know, been the most horrible person and, you know, robbed and spent my whole life being a robber? Yeah. And it's like, well, look at the guy on the right of Jesus. He spent his whole life, or was it the left? I don't recall. But, you know, he spent his whole life being a thief. And all he did was hint at compassion, hint at mercy. You know, will you remember me when you're in kingdom? And Jesus responds with, "Today you'll be with me in paradise."
Today, I love that's one
a
of my
pretty awesome God.
favorite lines. Today. So a lot of people think, oh, NDEers are, you know, or maybe Christian types or whatever. I'm not judging anyone or blaming, but they may think, oh, you know, NDEers aren't real, or they're making it up, or so forth. And the rapture, I don't know about all that. All I know is I was with him instantly. And he said, "Today you'll be with me in paradise." So, I mean, paradise. I mean, that's just awesome. How good is that? And so much love and no judgment. So, I do think that I love what Howard Storm, to mention him again, when he asked God, what was the best religion? He said, the one that brings them closer to me. And so, we, you know, just because someone doesn't believe in a particular way that maybe we might on whatever that would be, your religion or spiritual preference, if people still have a love of God in their heart, it's not up to us to tell them how they need to do that. And I think that's the problem. You've got, I mean, and look, it's a dilemma. I don't have the answer. I mean, anyone watching this, if they've got the answer, let me know, because I don't. So you've got the Christian, I'm not, you know, saying one's good or bad. I'm just talking. You got the Christian-y people, they're very dogmatic. And maybe because it feels safe there, I don't really know. You know, I love Jesus. I'm not beating up on anyone. And then you've got New Agers, which may seem far-fetched and way out there to Christians, and then to the New Agers, then the Christians seem rigid. So if we, the way, whatever it is, or whatever, where someone is, I feel like that they need to go kind of what you went through, to say, look, let me just ask some questions. It's okay to ask questions and to have a personal relationship with God. You can't expect a preacher man to do it for you. You got to do it yourself. So you have to ask big questions, and it is scary. I've looked into stuff. I could go, oh, it's scary. Why is it scary? Because I'm going outside of what I know, right? But if I come from a place of love, and if I bring Jesus with me everywhere, I mean, so I don't get in too much trouble. But the thing is,
Beautiful.
we should be able to ask and to question and to look, and a lot of religions don't really like that.
No, they want you to follow the cookie
Their
cutter
thing.
thing they've laid out, and it's
Right.
well intentioned. I
It's,
mean,
yeah,
for
sure.
instance, Christianity has this, thing against premarital sex. Well, one guy, when he was in heaven, he asked about this issue, and he was shown two people making love, but he only saw their spirits, and apparently their spirits
Yeah.
merge. So when you
Uh-huh.
make love, your spirits merge, and you take on a
Right.
little bit of that other person. So you have to be careful about who you mix souls with, and the rule was set up for that, but they're very rigid. I have a few good analogies about spirituality and religion that might help
Interesting.
some of the listeners. Do you think
Yeah,
that's something we
yeah,
can do?
yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Okay, so
I'm an open book. They're an open book. Yeah, go for it.
okay,
And
so the first two are from
Mhm.
Lee Carroll, who trans channels an entity named Cryon,
Yes,
and
yes, I'm familiar.
but what he says is supported by those who have near-death experiences. And then, of course, I'll close with my analogy about Captain Cook's brew.
Mhm.
So religion can be seen as a giant tree of life that literally has roots which go into the ground and connect all of humanity. And this tree, with this massive loving trunk, which is God, can branch out in many different religions: Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, Islam. And you can still branch out any way you want and still be connected to the trunk. So heaven is not invested in the dynamics of religious structure as we are. They understand that some people prefer the structure of religion to connect with God,
True.
but they want us to choose something that will work for us. So the other analogy is this: imagine you're in a bitter divorce, and your spouse, out of spite and anger, gains custody of the children and takes your children away, far away from you, hides them, moves far away, and you can't find them. And you're desperate. You want to connect with your kids, and you spend many, many years searching for your children. You can't find them. It's been over 10, 15 years, nothing. You finally give up in despair. And then one day, your children call you, and they say, "Hey, it's us. We've been looking for you for a long time. We're here. We're in your neighborhood. Can we come and see you?" Of course, you're excited. "Yeah, please come and see me." And you go outside and you wait, and then there they are. They're coming down the road. They're driving right towards you. Now, let me ask you this: do you care what kind of car it is? Do you care if it's a car in perfect working condition or if it's a beat up old car with a lot of
Right.
problems? You don't care. You're just happy your kids are coming to see you.
Yeah.
God doesn't care if you're in a religion that's,
Beautiful.
pretty good and perfect, or whether it's got a lot of questionable doctrines and rules. They're just happy you came and saw them. And if you go seeking God, just like what the Bible says, I don't consider myself a Christian anymore, but the Bible has a lot of spiritual truths. And one of them is, knock and the door will be open. Seek and you shall find. You look for God. You try and connect with God through whatever means and whatever religion.
Right.
It opens up an avalanche of support from the other side of the veil. So I view blessed is the person who seeks God in any way, in any means, with any doctrine, even if it's no doctrine. If they're looking for God, bless that person. They're
Yes.
coming home to see their Father, and the Father's going to welcome them home with open arms, regardless of the tool.
Ooh,
So I see
preach it.
religion
That's the
as
truth.
Captain Cook's brew. So in the 1700s, when ships embarked on long voyages lasting several years, they would eat food that, like salted beef and things like that. They wouldn't get fresh fruits and vegetables. And scurvy is a disease that afflicts
Right.
people if you don't get enough vitamin
Right.
C. If you have a long-term
Right.
lack of vitamin C in the diet, you'll get
Right.
scurvy and die. So Captain Cook had a brew which he served to his crew, and it had an odd mixture of ingredients: malt, sauerkraut, vinegar, soap. One of the
Ooh.
ingredients was lemon syrup. which is loaded with
Right.
vitamin C.
Yeah.
So if you drank Captain Cook's brew, you didn't get scurvy, but it was only because of one active ingredient, which is vitamin C.
Vitamin
And
C.
the active ingredient in any religion is the love of God. And
Yes.
all the world's major religions have common elements because this active ingredient of the love of God is there. They care about brotherly love and charity and peace and forgiveness and cooperation. So, you know, over 80% of the world believes in a monotheistic God. So I see religion as different cultures and different people honoring God in their own way. And that's my summary of religion and how heaven views religion.
No, that's beautiful. No, so let me ask you this then. That's religion. And religion can have its place and it's definitely there for people, but you don't, it's like a tool. You know, sometimes you need a hammer, sometimes you need a screwdriver, where you definitely don't want a hammer if you need a screwdriver. So I think it depends, not that religion is disposable and so forth, but I guess what I'm saying, I feel like that anything that stops you from getting closer to God is not good. Anything that helps you get closer to God is good. So I can't answer that.
And religion can be both, right?
Can be both.
Depending on the person, because
Exactly
it's like
right.
training wheels on a bicycle. You might need it to start, but if you keep them on there too long, it's going to hinder you. So some people
you get
may
too comfortable.
be fine with just staying in their religion the whole life, no judgment from heaven. Others are like, well, I need something more, and then you're going to have to step outside the religion.
And you've done that, and it takes a lot of courage. So let's talk about spirituality. So how do you see spirituality now? Because to me, no matter whether you're religious or not religious, or people that are atheists or really atheists, but what about if you were in a place like, I love God and life is great and I am open, and like you said, there's some beautiful things. I think people do tend to cling a little bit toward the religion they came from, and that's fine. It's just it's kind of like during the holidays they like eating certain kinds of food, and that's fine. But when you go into spirituality, what do you feel like that is to you?
Well, to me, spirituality, I would define that more as a person ignoring what they've been told to believe about God by religion or culture, and simply asking themselves or doing their investigations and saying, hey, what makes sense? I mean, I'll give you an example. One of the things that for me as a Christian is I remember thinking, so wait a minute, there are people, you know, I remember hearing, if you don't accept Jesus, you're going to hell. Well, I thought, well, what about these guys who are, you know, somebody's born on an island in Indonesia somewhere,
they don't know,
lives an entire life, never hears about God or Jesus, and dies. And what does God say? Oh, tough luck. You were born in the wrong place. It's eternal punishment for you. So that's an example of sort of investigating, you know, like, well, does this make sense? And then asking the question, you know, well, what's going on here? So spirituality is also, to me, believing in things beyond my five senses, believing in things beyond my, you know, beyond what I can touch and see and smell and hear. And it takes a leap of faith, but once you do that, it opens up a whole nother world. So one of the things that started happening to me is a gift of psychic abilities, which everybody has them. It's a matter of learning how to use it. So, you know, I always tell people, I'm psychic, just like everybody else, right?
That's so funny. Yeah, and why is that a dirty word to people? Do you ever notice that's a dirty word?
It is a dirty word to people.
They start thinking about, oh, you're fortune tellers and doing weird stuff or whatever. I don't know. Well, and I'm like, it just means annoying. That's all it means.
It means annoying. And what's funny is I've even had some Christian friends that have criticized me for that. I was like, well, wait a minute though. Jesus was psychic. Remember at the well, he said to the woman, you know, you've had 7 and none of them were your husband. And she goes, oh, I see you are a prophet, sir. I mean, he was psychic. He was completely psychic.
And he was also a medium because he was talking to Moses and Elijah, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years after they had been I mean, because they're not dead, they're in heaven. They're not dead.
Channeling is demonized by certain religions, like, you know, a channeler. It's like, well, Christianity talks about the Bible being the word of God. Well, if it's the word of God, that means it was channeled. Somebody was hearing a message and writing it, right? That's channeling. So the Bible was channeled.
Right. The Bible was channeled. But I think that people think, well, that's back then. A lot of times people go, oh, miracles were back then. Now, the whole healing, like you mentioned about you and not getting a healing, it is a mystery to me. This is one of those I can't answer. Certain things I'm like, I feel okay about that. But this one, why are some people not? I don't think it's entirely put it off on God thing. Sometimes I think you have to go through that to wake yourself up, to experience yourself. Maybe you need to. I've seen many times with clients that that's the only thing for them to stop. I mean, I hate to say it, and to be quiet, because they will not do it. So that I don't know all the reasons behind that, and I think that there's also I've noticed, not always, but there can be a selfishness, like heal me, do me. And I'm like, well, hold up now. What's your responsibility on this? Well, let's look at your life here. What's going on? I mean, if you're asking God to step in, then you need to step it up. What are you doing? What are you doing for this world? What are you doing? What's going on with you? So a lot of times people are like that. I've seen with healers. I'm like, oh, I wouldn't want to call myself a healer, although I've done that, but because it's like, do me. Oh, it didn't work. They suck. Well, maybe you suck. Maybe God needs to let you, maybe you need to wake up. I don't know. I mean, I can't answer that. And I don't like seeing people suffer, but here's the thing. We're human. At some point, it sucks. We all suffer, but it's not like we die. We live forever.
At least we've got a good future. I mean, for me, I suspect that some suffering is pre-planned at a soul level. Some may not be. I suspect mine was pre-planned, which is why I wasn't healed immediately, because my physical condition broke me. All right. So I was living high on the hog. I was, taking vacations every year and scuba diving all over the world. And I bungee jumped and hang glided, and I swam with the whales in the Great Barrier Reef. Okay. And I did all these great adventures. And I was living high on the hog, and I would not have changed a darn thing about my life had I not become a broken person. And that chronic pain broke me. It brought me to the brink of suicide. And it was when I became broken that when I asked the question, maybe there is no God, or maybe he doesn't care about me. And that turned my life in a completely different direction.
Wow.
And that may not have happened. I doubt that would have happened had I not been broken. So sometimes it takes a painful experience to make us change our ways.
I
will choose that. If the soul thinks that that's the only way to get this thing that I want, it's going to do it.
Well, it could be a loss of some kind. It could be a loss of a death, or a marriage, or this, or a job, or a career, or whatever. I've had people's careers just cut. Mine was. I'm like, what's going on? I've always done really well. What's going on here? And no matter what I did, when it was time, and I've heard that one, Ingrid Honkola talks about that. It was like, boom. And so, I think it's just different ways that God gets our attention. To be honest, I think it's just different ways to get us to wake up. So let me ask you this. I'm so curious about this. Now, you've done so much spiritual investigations with not only with NDEs, but just within your own life. Now I know you're like me. You're looking at, now, what's this whole thing? What is all this crystalline grid and the star seeds, and what's all this about? Because there's quite a lot to talk about this these days. How do you think that fits into the spiritual nature of, because this is one of those things is outside religion. Okay. It is. I've been already called a heretic, and I'm like, wow, well, I didn't even know about this, in March. Well, not really. And so, and I'm like, now I'm looking at it now, and I think we should allow ourselves to ask questions, because I think like Howard Storm again, he said that Jesus showed him all these different species, and he said it was so many. He goes, okay, that's good, I'm done. But I mean, certainly
several thousand questions. Howard Storm said he asked around 5,000 questions. So yeah, ask questions.
You should ask questions. I mean, that's the first thing a lot of people do, right? They go over there and they get their questions, and it's like, instantly, energy, boom, instantly. So how do you think this fits into the spirituality of things. And do you think this whole starseed thing, is that our real history? Why is there a connection going on, and why is there's this interest that's happening?
Well, from what I understand, this is a very special time in the history of mankind. So for thousands of years, the paradigm has been conflict, right? The paradigm has been, if I want something, I'm going to have to take it from you, or we're going to have to fight for limited resources. Well, since the 1950s, with mass manufacturing, there is a new reality. And the new reality is there is enough for everyone. With our technology, with 1950s technology, and a third of the people being too old, sick, weak, or unwilling to work, and the rest only working a 10 to 20-hour work week, there could be enough for everybody if we cooperated. So there has been a paradigm of war, which is winding down, and we're going through what's called the Great Awakening. So it's a great spiritual awakening, and people are waking up to the fact that there's more than just the physical life. They're waking up to the fact that if we cooperate and stop fighting each other, that we can make heaven on earth. Now, it won't quite be like heaven that the near-death experiencers describe it, but compared to today's cultures of greed and violence, it's going to be like heaven on earth. So there's a lot of bad guys here, a lot of very powerful people who are making lives miserable for the general population. And this is just a great awakening that's happening right now. People are waking up to their spiritual side. They're waking up to new realities. I'm more than just a monkey that, evolved and came down from the trees. They're waking up to their eternal selves. They're waking up to some of the truths that the ancestors and indigenous cultures knew about that we lost. And so it's a great awakening, and it's going to transform society, and we are going to become an ascended species. Now, this is a done deal. We were on edge for a while. We came real close to destroying ourselves. We had the weapons, we had the nuclear weapons, we had the attitude, Russia against the US. And thanks to a lot of help from above, that was averted. So we are a juggernaut now, headed towards being an ascended species. And that doesn't mean we're going to be balls of energy existing, as own pure energy. No, it doesn't mean we're going to all be, throwing away our religions and singing Kumbaya and all agree on everything. Wisdom will not make us all agree on everything. It will make us appreciate the different perspectives of others and make us cooperate. So, people think in an ascended planet, there's not going to be religion. No, there'll be religion. It'll change, and people will respect others' religions. And it'll be different than today's religion, of course, but they won't be killing each other. So it'll be like a healthy family, all right? The brothers and sisters may argue, but they're not going to pick up guns and start shooting at each other like humanity has done. They might get mad at each other. They might not talk to each other, but they're not going to do foolish things like war. So the planet's in the middle of a great awakening, and we're moving towards being an ascended species. And once we are, we're going to, apparently, the word from the other side of the veil, we're going to seed life on another planet and help them through the same process we went through. So
did that come up in your research?
What's that?
Did that come up in your research, where did as far as the other side, and that we're going to see what an intergalactic species, because that keeps coming up as a prophetic message from different people. So did that come up in your research? It did?
Yes, it came up in my research. That part is kind of spotty. There's not a whole lot of information from near-death experiencers about the future, and so I'm doing my best guess to put it together. But what is clear is that we're in the middle of a great awakening. There's not going to be a destruction of mankind. That's where we were headed. I mean, you have things like Revelation in the Bible and Nostradamus, because that was the potential. We were going to destroy ourselves.
Oh yeah,
and it was averted. So we got help from above, and we probably got help from the Pleiadians who seeded life on this planet. So our galactic parents helped us out quite a bit. And a lot of people, when they had the near-death experiences, when they asked thousands of questions, a very common question they would ask is, Are we alone in the universe? And of course, that's
No.
the answer is always the same. No, the universe is full of life, and there are other dimensions that contain universes that are also full of life. I mean, we've got a really big family, so we're not alone, and we're kind of the new kids on the block. We like to think
I love that.
And we've got the best technology. And it's like, no, we have 200 years of industrial revolution before single-celled organisms had developed on Earth. The Pleiadians had 1 million years of technology. We're the new kids on the block. So.
Right. Well, I interviewed Fiona van Rensburg, who's a Pleiadian, and she'll be in October. And so she was saying that the Pleiadians have been on Earth for 150,000 years helping humanity. And she said that normally every 26,000 years that you kind of restart. But this time the decision came from the top, Team God, that no, we're going to try to get past this and get enlightened and go on. We're not going to shut it down or blow the place up. And so I think we're actually getting help on that to do that. But, Earth is a pretty young planet, right? I mean, there's other solar systems that are eons old. So, and we know we live forever. So, I question, what is our true history? I don't think it's what we think it is.
Yeah, I've heard about, from the other side of the veil, I've heard about civilizations that are 50, 60,000 years old that we know nothing about, and they had, some of them, technologies that we do not possess. Right. And we always think we've got the best technology. Well, no, some has been lost. There have been technologies lost in time.
Well, until we learn how to handle anger and turn it into love, I really don't want these advanced technologies. I want us to get over that hump. Let's go to the love, get past that, get to the love area, and then the new technologies bring it. But we don't want new technology and new toys in the hands of psychopaths and madmen. So this is important. We go through this love revolution. Now, when I had Sergio Magnotta, he was on a few months ago, and he is a Toltec American Indian Mexican, and he talked about the Mayan Aztec calendar, and from his point of view, it was very fascinating. And his mentor is a Pleiadian. He said that the people that didn't make it through this great awakening and were determined, they wanted the old ways and they wanted to be angry and this and that literally, this is his perspective. I thought it was interesting that their bodies would literally, their organs start shutting down. They would just, they just die. And I said, well, what would happen? He said, they would come back in a family and lineage that was more open. But they would literally, if they just refused to go forward with this, I don't know, love revolution, whatever, that they would just, the bodies, that would be such a high vibration that they would just conk out. I was like, really? But that was part of the prophecy, he said. But he said this was to happen. Yeah, wow. It's in different places that this is to happen, that this is going to happen. That's why you have some people resisting, and you have some people, look, for the first time, I've always been an oddball. I finally feel at home.
I finally have an audience. Finally, there's people we can talk to, right?
Yeah, there's finally people. And people like, I'm waking up, I don't know what to do. I'm like, I got you covered. I got this down. I've been talking to spirits since 3. I've been astral. I got this down. This is the thing that I know the best. I'm like, finally, something that I feel comfortable in doing. I never did well with the rigid world, and I never did well with, there's a phoniness. I guess that's a good word, phoniness, versus like right now, we're just talking genuinely. Isn't it refreshing to talk to another human being genuinely, even if they have different opinions?
Oh, absolutely. And that phoniness, I remember, you've lived your whole life in this sort of paradigm, right? Being awake spiritually. And I was not. I was asleep till my mid-40s. So for me, I've got to see both sides of it. And on the other side, I would have looked at someone like you and me today. My former self would have looked at me and you and said, oh, those people are nut jobs. They've lost it. They're crazy. They're off their rockers. They're hopeless cases. There's nothing that anybody can do for them.
And I'm sure some people hearing this might think that, which is back to the labeling and back to all that. But, there was a side of me early on when I was younger. I would have, let's put it this way. This wouldn't have resonated, what we're talking about. The other thing, I would have thought, there's no way I'm telling anybody that I'm, a psychic medium. I'm not, I get this all the time. This is never turns, I can turn it off, but it's always there. So I would never, no, I'm not. Are you kidding? Doing this coming out? No way. So, it's like those darn Mexicans. Okay, I'm going to marry one. So, and God's got to have a sense of humor, but I think this is where we need to be kinder to ourselves, because I think when I see people that are harsh to other people, that's how they treat themselves.
Yeah.
They might not like themselves so much. Yeah. Their heart is hardened. So, I think that's back to that crystalline grid. I think that it's also healing. Not only is it I've been told a communication spiritually, but and then yes, that we kind of feed into it, but it's a protective mechanism. But at the same time, it's healing. It's like a blanket. It's like a nurturing blanket. And there's people that need more love.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Well, so tell us how we can get your book. Tell us the projects you're working on. And I want to make sure that people can get a hold of you, and tell everybody about your website.
Oh, thank you. My website is the name of the book, which is godtookmyclothes.com. And, if you want to take a look at the book before you buy, the first couple of chapters are there. You can download the preview version and read the first few chapters. Make sure it's the kind of thing you're interested in. If you speak Spanish, I guess I didn't know this till I published the book here in the USA, but if it's in a different language, it's considered a different book. So the Spanish version is complete, and you can download that from the website for free. And the published book is available at all the big major online bookstores, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. It's even on eBay, Walmart, and those places. And it's $11 for the paperback and $5 for the ebook on Barnes & Noble or Amazon. And of course, if you absolutely want to read it and you just are struggling financially and you can't, send me an email. My email and phone number on the website, and I can try and get you a free e-copy. So
very sweet.
I can't guarantee that for everybody, but I will do my best to get you a copy if,
that is very sweet.
If that's the case. And as far as working on new projects, I am going to be starting a spiritual consulting and help business, and that'll pop up on my website when it's ready in a couple of weeks at godtookmyclothes.com.
Wonderful. So I know you're working on a lot of things, but you can't really say till it's kind of out there manifested and all of that. So yeah, I'm glad you're awake, because I sure need the help. So thanks. And how boring would it be to be alone doing this? So I'm so happy that you're sharing yourself. And this is what we should do. We should learn to be like David, like you've been today, vulnerable. You've been vulnerable, and look, people love you that much more, because you know what? We're not perfect, and in our brokenness, like you said, in your brokenness, you can find who you really are, which is pretty awesome.
And, I want to give a brief little message to people who might be looking at this video and watching some of the Seeking Heaven videos, and they might want to talk about this stuff to certain people, and you might have family or friends or religious, members that call you crazy. Okay. Because a lot of the stuff does sound far-fetched when you talk about it on the surface. It sounds very far-fetched and crazy from a cultural standpoint. And I want you to remember the people who were called crazy in the past. So over 500 years ago, everybody was aware of a fundamental truth, and that was that the earth is the center of the universe, and the star and the moon and the sun revolve around us. And then one mathematician worked out the math and said, no, the earth is traveling through the space around the sun at 90 miles a second. And that was Nicholas Copernicus. Now, everybody thought he was crazy. Okay, they called him crazy. He had to delay the publishing of his book on the revolution of celestial spheres until after his death, because he was going to be excommunicated from the church for speaking such ridiculous nonsense, which turned out to be true. Even in the 1700s, when the first archaeologist discovered giant teeth and jawbones, and he speculated there were once giant lizards roaming the earth, which he called Dinosauria. they thought it was a hoax. They laughed at him, they poked at him, they made fun. They said, "Oh, crazy, come on, giant lizards roaming the earth." And even as early as the early 1900s, when I think it was, I want to say it was Dr. Owens, I can't remember, but the first scientist who suggested that the continents were drifting on the surface of the earth, continental drift, he was laughed at. So if you're talking about spiritual concepts and things you've learned, and they laugh at you, well, you're in good company. Just because they're laughing doesn't mean you're not right.
Oh gosh, I love that. Thank you for saying that. And the way that I look at that, I just love that look at it when you look at the movies and you see the hero. The hero in the movie generally is not backed up by a lot of people till they become the hero, right? They're left hanging. They're like, "You're crazy." And then at the end, when they become the hero, then everybody wants to be their friend. So it takes courage to step out and know your truth. And look, I always tell everybody, you have a PhD in you. You know what you need and want. You know what feels right to you. And we all have that inner compass. I mean, that's just something that is installed in us. We don't need a tom-tom. We have that right there. So thank you so much for your time today, David. This has been so worth the wait because we've been going back and forth. This has been awesome, and you're awesome. And I support you on whatever you're doing. So thank you so much for today.
And Tamara, thank you so much for inviting me to be on Seeking Heaven. Would love to be on again someday. I really enjoyed our conversations, and I always learn so much talking with you. And I hope all goes well in your ventures as well.
Oh, thank you so much. God bless you. And much love to you, brother.
Same to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.